When I was a vegetarian, that was the most depressed I've ever been. It never worked for me. Once I started going back to a meat-based diet, I was able to come off the lithium. But now what's happening is the demographic in the nursing homes, it's getting younger and younger. And so there's people younger than me we're not talking about assisted living. We're talking about full care, skilled nursing homes, sitting in wheelchairs, like you said, waiting to die. I'm off the hormones. And my husband says that our intimacy, it's like I'm like a 20-year-old.
Well, good morning, everybody. We have today Lisa joining us. Lisa, give me a moment. I'll unmute you, and let me just change the view here, so we'll get started on that. So happy Thursday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Yep.
All right.
Well, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. Glad to have you here. Where are you located, by the way?
So I now reside in Tucson, Arizona. I am a transplant from upstate New York.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, it's March 2nd, and we had snow this morning, not just like a dusting, like we have snow on the cactuses. It's magical. It's melting as we speak, but being an upstate New Yorker, it was so cool to be out this morning. It was amazing.
Wow. Yeah, Tucson, that's pretty far. Yeah, I lived in Phoenix for a while. I don't know if Charlie's in the room, but I mean, Charlie, please tell your cows to go out and fart some more because we're having too many cold weather lately. So there must be a problem there. Maybe there's a glitch in the climate change system. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome. Well, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your background. You originally from upstate New York. What kind of stuff do you do, and what happened to you? What's the story here?
So, good morning. My name is Lisa Glick, and I will be 63 a week from today. So I'm still 62, and my career, I was a public school vocal music teacher. So I'm recently retired. I taught 33 years, elementary, middle school, high school. I'm a vocalist, so I'm a singer, very physical, play piano. And I've always been a dancer and an athlete. And I'm a musician, so I'm creative and I'm passionate. And I had a lot of issues my whole life with disordered eating, depression, and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so I've had a journey very similar to others, with the restricting, the binging, keto, and now I'm a carnivore girl, and I will never, ever go back.
It's funny. A lot of people say that. It's kind of interesting to me. And I always I'm happy to hear that, but at the same time, I'm always like, well, I'd never say never. But anyway, it's interesting. So let me, because you said a history of disordered eating, I was just kind of having a conversation with a friend of mine, Nick Norwitz, who's trying to write up some case studies for the literature on people that have recovered from anorexia, from either, ketogenic or carnivore diets. And so can you be more specific when you said you had this disordered eating pattern? What was going on?
As a child, I never had an issue with food or my body. I was always active, and I ate when I was hungry, stopped when I was full. And then when I became a teenager and I stopped growing, I put on weight. And so I'm 62. So we're talking like the 70s, right? When thin and thinner was inner, you know what I mean? So I just started restricting, and I got really carried away, and I became really, really, really thin. And then when I tried to get better, I went the opposite way, and I started binging. So I went to college, 1978. I weighed 110 when I went to college at age 18. And when I left college at age 22, I weighed 160. Mm-hmm. I'm 5'3". So just for a frame of reference.
Yeah. Okay. So that's definitely decent. Almost 50% of your weight. That's a significant weight gain. They always talk about the freshman 15 the kids get when they, I don't know that they get that anymore because they start out with the seventh grade 50 or something like that. So that was binging, and I think a lot of people, they just kind of, maybe they go from eating healthy food at home to just the college food, which is cafeteria, and, if it's drinking and garbage, that's not uncommon to see for sure. So I guess over the years, it sounds like you tried to deal with this in different ways, right? Different diets, different exercise regimes and things like that.
Yeah, so I think my journey is very typical of many people in my age demographic. I did the salad and the low carb. So when I got out of college, I got my act together and I kind of got in the middle. I was like 130-ish, maybe. I'm 5'3", and I'm a runner, and I teach dance and fitness. And so that was okay. I was like a normal size, but the eating and the food obsession has like always like been there. Like I remember always being hungry and always thinking about my next meal. So I did the low carb, I did the vegetarian thing for a while. And when I was a vegetarian, that was the most depressed I've ever been. It never worked for me. And somehow I got my act together. I got the food sort of under control, low carb, low fat, the 6 meals a day, eating a little bit at a time. And then when I went through my menopause, I'm on a second marriage, a good one. And my current husband is a research scientist, and we're long distance runners. And he said, I think we should try keto because of the inflammation. So I started the keto, then the keto led to intermittent fasting, and then that led to carnivore.
Yeah, you remarked that you had significant depression when you were vegetarian, so excluding basically meat from the diet. Still dairy and eggs, I assume, maybe, perhaps, but and we see a lot of literature now that supports that absence of meat in the diet is correlated with higher amounts of depression. And some people will say, well, people that are depressed choose to eat, they stop eating meat for whatever reason. But there's a lot of people that, like myself, feel that some of the nutritional depletion leads to that. Did that improve when you started including animal products back in your diet? Did you notice that?
Very much so. So I have a little bit of a story here.
Okay.
I was diagnosed as bipolar when I was 31. Okay. I had my first and only child when I was 29, and I had a very, very, very bad depression, the kind of depression where I was non-functional when my daughter was about a year after I stopped breastfeeding. And of course, all the doctors and everyone thought it was postpartum. But after a long journey, it's another whole story about not getting good medical care. I finally got correctly diagnosed as bipolar. And my doctor, who saved my life, I did go on lithium for many, many years, which it saved my life. But she wanted me to incorporate the good fats and add the meat back. So once I started going back to a meat-based diet, I was able to come off the lithium. And okay. N equals 1, I am certain that eating animal products is crucial to my mental well-being. I'm positive for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that out as well. I'd go as far as say I think it's helpful for most people, in fact. And so, did you, as far as going to carnivore, how long have you been doing that now? How long have you been doing this carnivore thing?
I'm coming up on 3 years.
Okay, so a reasonable amount of time to sort of get used to it. And so, when you were in keto already, so a lot of that, I did something similar. I was on a ketogenic diet, and then I saw these crazy people just eating meat in a zero carb form, and I thought that was the craziest thing, but I thought I'd try it. And lo and behold, here we are 7 years later, written a book on it and all that stuff. But what prompted you to go from keto? Were you still some things you were struggling with, and what prompted you to switch to carnivore?
Yeah, so I think like many people, anytime you transition to a new food plan and you cut out the crap, you're going to see improvement. So I think that's why I see a lot of people that go to plant-based or primal eating, they see improvement because they cut out the junk. Maybe they cut out the sugar. So I was doing keto. I'm a long distance runner. And when I say long distance, I mean ultras, like I've done 50 and 100 milers because I love it. So we went to keto, the husband and me, and it was working until it wasn't. And so here's the specifics. So I'm 62 now. When I went through my changes, my menopause, I started having issues with bloating, like a lot of women do. And I never met a vegetable I didn't love, like cauliflower, lettuce, green beans, broccoli. So I was reading about carnivore. I'm in a lot of intermittent fasting communities, and a couple of my friends started doing the carnivore. And I thought, what the heck, I'm going to try this. So I decided Christmas 3 years ago that I was going to just get rid of all the vegetables and go on carnivore as an elimination protocol because I was reading about the oxalates and the lectins and all those toxins. And I went on it for an elimination protocol, and it was working so well. I thought, this is how I'm going to stay. So the thing with keto was the too many vegetables, too much eating often, and the bloating.
It's interesting. I just got back from low carb Denver, and at the beginning of the lecture, I'd asked people, if they've been eating more meat and if their health had gotten better. And I asked if they cut out ultra-processed junk food, and they all said yes. And then I asked if they cut out vegetables, and most of them said yes. And so, I mean, it's just kind of like they're eating more meat, they're eating less vegetables, and yet their health is improving, which is the exact opposite of what, some of the epidemiology would point to, which I think is just poor science in general. And so when we start seeing actual results in people, we have to sort of start to take notice of that. So how did your transition go? And was your husband on board with you at the carnivore thing at the beginning? You say he's a research scientist. Is he in the health research? Or what is his science? And did he join you in this journey?
So first of all, I would like to say that you can do this on your own if your family does not participate, but it's so much easier if you're on board together. So my husband is in environmental science, but he did have a minor in nutrition. And the thing about him is he knows how to read the data and separate the junk from the real facts in the studies. So he started reading about the toxins in the plants and the oxalates and the lectins, because even though we were doing well, we're long distance runners and hikers, we still had a little inflammation and a little of this. So when I said, I'm going to do full on carnivore, he said, I'm in. So we did it together, which was so great. And we live in Arizona. The weather's amazing. So what do? We barbecue. And the other thing I was thinking about the other day is so much less food waste because we're not throwing out mushy vegetables. And, we live in Arizona. There's a lot of farms, so we buy our meat grass-fed, which you don't have to, but we are in a position where we're able to do that. We bought a whole cow from a local farm, and we support a local meat co-op. And so environmentally, I feel really good about that too.
Yeah, I was going to think about my old podcast partner, Zach Bitter. He's an ultra marathon guy. I don't know if you're familiar with Zach, but
Zach, he's the one who got us started on keto. I don't know him personally, but we travel in the same circle. So shout out to Zach Bitter. Hey.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And I think he moved to Austin, if I'm not mistaken. Because he was in Arizona for a while. Maybe he's still there, but I'm not sure. So your husband, let me just go into this because your husband is an environmental scientist, and we keep hearing that cows are destroying the planet. And does he have any reservations about eating more meat, or is he concerned about that, or does he not really buy into that sort of that sort of narrative, I suppose?
So this is like another whole conversation, but so he feels that eating meat is better for the environment because airplanes, cars, it's like, don't tell me the cows are upsetting the climate change. So that's another whole conversation. And let's talk about plant farming, killing the mice, killing the birds, the pesticides, the gas needed for the tractors. So we very much feel that being meat eaters is helping the climate.
Yeah, and I think it certainly can be, and I think it's been unnecessarily scapegoated and unfairly scapegoated. I think for people to just want to make us. I mean, I think the goal is to have every single human on the planet eating nothing but processed food, injecting weight loss drugs, and taking psych meds. I mean, I think that seems to be the business model here, and I think not buying into that is upsetting to some people. Let me ask you about how is your long distance running? Are you still active in that, and are you able to do that on a carnivore diet? Because a lot of people say you got to be eating carbs and you got to be fueling with 100 grams of carbs every hour or something like that. Are you able to do that without the carbohydrates in the diet?
So we mentioned Zach Bitter, and so we went out to the Hard Rock 100. It's in Silverton, Colorado. My brother passed away there, so we went a couple of years ago to pay homage to my brother, and we had been reading about ultra runners, and Zach Bitter, as you know, is an amazing ultra runner. And he's a ketogenic runner. So that's how we found keto. So let me talk about the carbs and the fueling, because I've lost friends in the athletic community over this issue. It's like food and politics, like big. So I can go like 18 miles without eating at all, just drinking water and having a little salt, having electrolytes. And that's one of the reasons we started keto, because we're tired of like bringing all the snacks and having to eat every 5 minutes. And I also am a fitness teacher. I instruct fitness classes. So this pre-workout, post-workout, it's like it's not necessary. So my running has not only improved, but the recovery, the reduction of inflammation. And the other thing is I live in this amazing area, so I can go out, enjoy nature and not worry about, I got to eat every half hour, every hour. I can just run and be in the moment.
Well, good for you. That's awesome. And I've met a number of ultra marathon runners that are doing carnivore, and they've been able to run 100 miles without it. And I know like a guy named Charles Washington runs marathons, and he doesn't even drink water. He just goes and runs, and it's, I think he's lighter by the time he crosses the finish line, so he's carrying less weight, and often he's able to negative split, meaning he runs faster at the end than he did at the beginning, and many times. So when you transitioned to carnivore, how did that go? What kind of, were you eating a diverse variety of foods? Tell me about, and maybe how it's progressed, and what are you eating today?
When I went to carnivore, I was coming from ketogenic. And before keto, I was still low carb, but I had been low fat. So transitioning to carnivore was really like seamless for me. I just left out the vegetables, and I didn't restrict. Like if I wanted to eat like 4 hamburgers for dinner, I would eat them. And so I don't think I even had a day where it was hard. The minute I made the mind shift, I was like, oh, well, lettuce isn't working for me anymore. It's not an issue.
Okay. So fair enough. And it's good to mention, because a lot of people will say that, well, why can't you just eat meat and healthy, vegetables and a little bit of fruit and have a quote unquote normal diet, normal balanced diet? And I said, well, there's a lot of people that try it and it just doesn't work for them, and they improve. And I repeatedly see people that when they extract vegetables from their diet, they get better for whatever reason that is. I'm not here to say that that's good or bad, but it is what it is. You said before you were obsessed about food, and I think about like a hungry lion. They're pretty obsessed about food until they eat, then they're chilled. But how does appetite and satiety and those things, do you notice a difference on carnivore versus keto, or the same as keto? I know when I went keto, the profound thing I noticed was I wasn't hungry all the time, which I thought was very remarkable. And the same thing I see in carnivore for sure. But how has that affected your food obsessiveness, I suppose? Like you said, you were before, had all this eating anxiety, I guess.
When I went to keto and added in the good fat, which was very scary, for a woman in my generation to add in the fat, I remember just freaking out about that. So that was a really positive step. But then it did diminish my appetite, and I didn't worry so much about the food, but it still was there. And I think the best thing for me about the intermittent fasting, which I still do, and the carnivore is it takes away the food worry. It gives me the food freedom, and it's almost like a spiritual thing, because there's not that part of my mind worrying about the food all the time. So I eat, I stop, I eat again, that kind of thing. And so now I have energy to focus on all these other things. Like I do my music, and I'm singing at nursing homes, and I'm teaching my fitness, and I'm interacting with my friends. I lead a women's trail running group. And so I just feel like it keeps upping the level. Like first it was the keto, now it's the carnivore, and it keeps improving my life.
You said you weighed about 130. Is that still where you're at weight-wise, around somewhere in there?
Oh, now? Oh, no. I'm 5'2.5". I just, I shrunk a teeny bit, and my bones are really good considering I was anorexic as a teen. I just had my bone density done. I weigh between 116 and 118.
Okay. So
I'm very muscular. I have a really low body fat percentage.
Oh, good for you.
Very muscular.
Yeah. I spoke with a guy yesterday who had severe osteoporosis, and she went carnivore, and because they wanted to put her on these bisphosphonates rather, and they also wanted to put her on they wanted to irradiate her thyroid for Graves' disease. She opted to go carnivore, and her thyroid function is now normal, and she's regained significant bone mass. So it's kind of interesting to see that. So your weight is now, I guess the weight you're happy with. How much are you eating a day to maintain that? Because you're pretty active. Could you guesstimate how much you eat generally as a 116-pound person? By the way, I'm more than twice what you are body weight. I'm 260 pounds right now. So it's kind of
wow.
Yeah.
So I do have to say, my food intake varies according to my activity level. So yesterday was, I taught 2 fitness classes in a row. Excuse me. And I walked the dog and I did a little cleaning. So I opened my window earlier in the day and I had 2 really nice meals. I had, a leftover burger. I had a grass-fed hot dog. I had some bacon. I'm a big proponent of bone broth. I really like it for the collagen and all that. And then for dinner, I made a new thing in the crock pot. I made like a chowder with clams and oysters and, cream and butter. But often we have steak, or I make a meatloaf with grass-fed ground beef, and I'll make like 4 pounds at once, so it's there. So I'd say I'm a 2-meal-a-day, or once in a while I'll eat 1 meal. I don't think I ever eat 3 meals. And I stop eating, like we eat dinner around 5, and after dinner, nothing. I don't eat in the evening at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important to me.
Yeah, I generally follow a similar pattern, about twice a day, and try not to eat a late meal if possible. And it seems like, when it comes to muscle retention, muscle building, which I think is incredibly important, it seems like a 2-meal pattern might be pretty ideal for most people. So that's what seems to naturally happen there. So you're out in the sun running a lot. I assume you sweat. How do you deal with electrolytes and salt and water and hydration? How do you deal with that?
Yes, so I have the pink Himalayan salt. I have these little Ziploc bags. I always carry that with me. I use S caps. They're by Hammer, and I use LMNT, and salt. I'm a salt girl. I love my salt, and that's another thing people have disagreements about with the high blood pressure. I have to stay away from the salt. Mm-hmm. So it's been the winter's been very cool, but I'm a big proponent of salt. And I also do my bone broth. I add salt and butter to that. So we salt all our food, and we always have pink salt with us, even like in my car, if I'm driving, because it gets hot in the summer, I'll just have salt and I'll throw a little on my tongue.
Do you, so you mentioned high blood pressure. Do you have high blood pressure, considering you're using all this salt? I mean, that's always a concern. And yeah, generally, I mean, my thoughts around salt is, when we talk about where do we get salty food from, it's not, I don't think it's the salt, it's the salty food. And most of the salty food is all the process of the potato chips and the breads and the cookies, and they all got salt in there. And that's where most Americans get most of their salt. So I think it's one of those things. It's maybe a marker for processed food intake.
Yes. So I have very low blood pressure. My brother, who passed away, he had high blood pressure. He died from a brain embolism. I want to mention a couple other things you touched on. I have low thyroid because when I was on the lithium, it messed up my thyroid, but it's okay. Saved my life. So I do take Synthroid now, but I'm going for my blood work next week. And you know how once you get in touch with your body, you know what's going on. And I had to cut my thyroid pills in half because I can tell it's improving. So each year, my Synthroid, I take Synthroid, the dosage has been going down. And I think I'm going to be able to come off it pretty soon because sometimes I skip a day. I don't take it every day. And I feel amazing. And when I do take it, I feel like I stuck my finger in a light socket. So I'm pretty sure that my dosage is too high. I want to mention another thing. I broke my right arm, my humerus. April will be a year. And I was 62 when I broke my arm. And because I eat meat and bone broth, high collagen diet, I kept going back to the orthopedic. He kept looking at my films going, how old are you? So I broke it. It was non-displaced and it was healing. My arm healed so quickly, and I'm a post-menopausal woman. So isn't that amazing that being carnivore helped my bone heal? I'm positive that helped me.
Yeah. I mean, as a surgeon, I think high quality nutrition definitely helps with healing for sure. And I think that's not even controversial. How did you break it out of curiosity? What happened?
I did not fall like at home. I'm very active and I run a lot. So I got an Elliptigo. It's a bike without a seat. It's a standing bike because I love to be outside. Okay. And I'm a dancer. I have great balance, but it was one of those perfect storms. I was coming down a hill and I hit a little patch of gravel and down I went and I reached out, out of instinct. And I snapped the bone. Okay. But, oh well.
So it was a significant energy injury because you see like people that just have these really low energy falls, people with osteoporotic bone, and they break everything. It reminds me of the guy who was the starch solution guy Dr. John McDougall, who fell in his bathroom. He had a cold and he fell and he broke like his pelvis and his femur and his spine from like a 3-foot fall, which as a male, and I think he was in his late 60s, that indicates significant compromise. But if you're crashing a bike going at high speed, and then there's a different story there. I'm glad you healed up. Probably spent a lot of time in a fracture brace. Did they have you wear a fracture brace for a while?
I just wore a sling, and they couldn't cast it because it was the humerus, and I was so good. Like I kept it really still, and then I was allowed to start walking later. And so I want to mention this. Years ago, if I had an injury and I couldn't run, I would have been petrified about gaining weight. But I'm like, not worried, because I already had been carnivore. I already had the intermittent fasting. And not only did I not gain weight, I actually lost a little weight because I lost a little bit of my muscle mass because I wasn't as active. But I healed really well. And I'm at like 95% range of motion now. And I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
Good for you. Sounds like it was relatively non-displaced than the fracture. It was maybe more. It was just a crack.
It was okay. It was just a clean break.
Okay. Well, good for you. I'm sorry you broke it, but I'm glad it healed very well for you. That's good to hear. So you said you run with a bunch of gals. And are you still actively like teaching in the school system with music and all that stuff, or no?
No. So I retired officially from my career in 2015. I was 55 because I started when I was 22. So I had 33 years in the system. So I was a public school music teacher in New York, and I retired. And then while I was working, I was doing all these other things. I was like singing in a band, and I was teaching fitness, and I was singing at nursing homes. So when I retired, I just segued to my plan B. And so right now I teach a bunch of fitness classes a week. I sing at nursing homes, and a little shout out to a group called Trail Sisters. It's a national organization to empower women to get on the trails. I'm a co-leader for that group here in Tucson.
Oh, awesome. Good to hear. So have you, you don't seem like you're very shy from what I can tell here. Are you talking to other people about nutrition? Does that ever come up with you and some of the other trail runners or other people you interact with in life?
It comes up a lot, and it's been a very interesting experience being in the athletic community, because the road running people, and I have some friends who are triathletes, they do the tris. The triathletes, they eat like every 30 minutes, and people get really like almost offended when I talk about it. And I post on my Facebook, I have the before and after pictures. I'm post-menopausal. My waist is like this big. So yes, I do talk about it. Where I'm at now is if people ask, I tell them. And then I have people messaging me behind the scenes, asking me, and I have converted a few people. Some people are coming over. And I also, as you probably know, because I'm on this podcast interview, I recently got certified as a carnivore and intermittent fasting coach, just because I wanted the certificate so that people don't challenge me about my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good for you, and congratulations. That's good. What about, obviously your husband's on board. Any other family? I don't know if you had kids or anything like that, or any relatives that are like, you're crazy and you're going to kill yourself. Do you know, obviously you're an ultra marathon runner, so one would presume you have at least pretty decent VO2 max and decent cardiac function. Are you concerned? Is anybody concerned about you dropping dead of a heart attack from cholesterol? And I don't know if your cholesterol has gone up or not. Some people it does, some people it doesn't.
Most of my family is fine with it. My daughter just got married in September, and she was very respectful of making sure that I had good food choices at all the events. I have a family member who's a vegetarian, and her partner is a vegan, and she's very, very, very unwell. Very unwell. She has chronic fatigue, blah, blah, blah. And I can't even talk about it with them. It's a little bit upsetting to me. But most of my friends are cool with it. In the running community, in the trail running community, there are a lot of vegan and vegetarians. So it's kind of the thing. I'm careful about who I speak about it with. But I want to talk about the cholesterol.
Sure.
So I had the calcium score done on my heart. I had it done when I was 57. And I just had it done recently because I had a big fight with my doctor about my cholesterol, and I switched doctors. Okay. I had a zero. on the calcium score. 0 when I was 57, and at 62, 0.
Good for you.
Because my cholesterol, I'll give you the numbers if you want. I have them here.
Sure.
And so I ended up switching doctors.
Okay. Well, and your cholesterol had been high this entire time. So what was it at?
Yeah. So my total, you ready, is 356.
Okay.
But my HDL is 127. And my LDL is 222. But my triglycerides are 59. So I don't know if you use this formula, but you divide the triglycerides, right, by the HDL. And my number is 0.46. So I went to my new doctor and she was like, oh, so the other doctor wanted to put me on, the Lipitor. And I was like, no. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, I'm done with you. So I went to my new doctor and she said, Lisa, this is amazing. So my triglyceride ratio to my HDL is 0.46, eating a meat-based diet. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, you fall very classically in what Dave Feldman is calling the lean mass hyperresponder cohort. And I just saw his data that he's going to publish on that particular thing. And they took 100 people very similar to you, low BMI, low trigs, high HDL, very high LDL cholesterols. I think the average age was something like 55. And they did coronary angiography, even beyond coronary, and they looked at soft plaque. And basically what they found is almost none in all those people. And every 101 of those people had almost zero soft plaque or calcified plaque. So it is, it's sort of, to me, in my mind, it becomes that LDL cholesterol or ApoB or total, they all become dependent variables. And because you're lean, you're active, you've got low triglycerides, I'm sure you've got good glucose numbers and all that type of stuff, low inflammation, those are all great to hear. So the new doctor's on board, no problems. And the other thing is, even the American Heart Association is saying that CAC scores can be used as a de-risking metric. So that if you've got somebody with high cholesterol without any other issues and they just have high LDL, but they have a 0 CAC score, you can kind of leave them alone, or and that's I think what we're finding.
So I want to put a shout out about the calcium score. So supposedly on paper, I was high risk, familiar, family, high cholesterol because of my brother and all that. But so the insurance wouldn't cover the calcium test, the calcium score test. So I'm like, fine, I'll pay for it myself. It was $99.
Right.
$99.
Yeah.
It's painless. They put you in a little machine. It's nothing. So if you have a fight with your doctor about your cholesterol, I would recommend, if you can, paying the $99 and being assertive about your care.
Yeah, that just a PSA. Yeah, the CAC score in most of the U.S., most states, I think there may be a few exceptions, you don't need a doctor's permission or insurance or anybody. You can pay them. And usually I had mine done. I'm 56. I had mine done at 52, and mine was, of course, 0 as well. And I think it cost me, I want to say it was $100 or $150. It was definitely, like a nice thing to know, because as you said, most doctors don't even know about it. And if they do, they're like, well, I'm not going to pay, or the insurance companies don't want to pay for it and that's usually the thing as a physician. If you try to order something that the insurance company's not going to pay for, that means you've got a half-hour fight with the insurance company on the phone. And most doctors don't want to do that. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes. They're just like, well, we're going to disincentivize people by making it a pain in the ass to get it done. And so good for you for fighting for you, sticking up for yourself. And I've said this many times, you've got to be your own health advocate. I don't care if even if you got the nicest physician in the world, you have so much more in the game, skin in the game, than your physician does about your own personal health. So good for you. Because some people, let me ask you, there was a question here about sweeteners and sugar. Are you using any kind of you mentioned elements, so there's maybe some stevia in that. Are you using some of these alternative sugar substitutes from time to time, or how's that work?
So that's a great question. I was one of those people back in the day. I was sweet and low. I was like a science experiment with that. And then I went to stevia, and I know there's a big controversy now over the erythritol. So because I clean fast, I cut out the artificial sweeteners. And that was like my last hurdle. Everything else, I don't care about cake. I don't care about cookies. I don't care about ice cream. But cutting out the artificial sweeteners was really hard for me. So I cut them out. I cleaned fast during the day, and they did affect me. Like if I would have a cup of coffee with like sucralose or something in it, like it felt like sugar to my body. So that was the only thing that I felt a little deprived with. So I gave them up. Occasionally at night after dinner, I'll have a cup of decaf with cream and I'll put a little tiny bit of stevia in it. But that's like my only vice. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat cookies. So I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's much of a vice anyway. I mean, but yeah, the erythritol thing is kind of, and I may talk about that, but it's there's a lot of nuance to that, and it's probably, it depends. I mean, I won't make the podcast about that, but let me ask you about fat to protein ratio. I mean, some people will suggest that women might need a little more fat than men do, just because women tend to have more body fat than men. Do you think about that much? Are you trying to focus on getting lots of extra fat as some people do, or do you just eat whatever you feel like?
So I do not like to count and measure that, because that leads into my, food phobia. So that's why I never could do Weight Watchers, no counting, no measurings. So when I was keto, I was a little more conscious about the fat percentage in my overall diet. But now I'm really trying to really be protein centered, being a post-menopausal woman. So I find protein, like I feel so good when I eat protein. But I do, like if we have steak in the evening, I'll put breast-fed butter on the steak. And I sometimes for dessert, I'll have a decaf coffee and I'll put a scoop of butter in it. So I kind of just listen to my body, and I pretty much know when I need a little more fat. But I would say at this point in my life, I'm really focusing on making sure I get enough protein.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's an important thing, particularly, well, really for anyone, but especially for postmenopausal women. I mean, what I saw was a lot of fractures as an orthopedic surgeon, as you can imagine, and a lot of thin, particularly Asian and Caucasian women are the highest risk factor for this. And they break their hip, and then they never are able to, I mean, a lot of them aren't able to walk very well again after that, and many of them die. And so it's important to maintain that bone mass. As far as, do you find that you'd mentioned, well, you don't look depressed to me. I'm just from interacting with you now, you look pretty happy. But have you found any significant cognitive benefits from carnivore or keto or both, or differences between them compared to, let's say, you said low fat and low carb, which just means low energy, which would sound to me like it would really suck. And then the vegetarian time. So how have those things differentially affected your mental health, your mood, your cognition, any of this? And you said bipolar as well. So talk about that if you don't mind.
Yep. Oh no, I'd love to talk about it. And I think it's a really important conversation to have. If someone said to me, what is the main reason that you chose carnivore? I think my number one is my mental health, because I still have little tiny episodes, like really minor, but I can handle them. Like I still have a little bit of up, and sometimes I have a little bit of a down, but it doesn't send me spiraling down the hill. So because of the being carnivore and getting the meat and the fat, I feel like I can handle my emotions much better. Clarity of thought. Whoa. I mean, I wrote a chapter for a book. I can play piano for hours without being distracted. I have to prep when I do my nursing home gigs, and my clarity of thought is amazing. I wish I had found this earlier when I was a teacher, because it really would have helped. So I want to preface this that what works for me might not work for everyone. But for me, I'm not saying like everyone that goes on carnivore, it's going to cure their bipolar. But for me, I was at a position in my life, I was at a time in my life where I had multiple tools. So it's eating the carnivore, eating the fat, cutting out zero alcohol, zero. I stopped alcohol at 50, not working for me. Incorporating not only exercise, but sun, fresh air, and sleep. Now that I'm not working full time, sleep priority. Go to bed early, wake up early with my, circadian rhythm. I think that I have to stay carnivore to keep myself healthy with my bipolar. I really, really do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you're familiar with a guy named Amber O'Hearn, who is just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I ran into her this weekend in Denver. And she is, she's had she had bipolar, which she put into remission with a carnivore diet and has been, basically, I think, symptom free or essentially for something like 14 years now. She's been doing the diet for that long. You mentioned you go into nursing homes, and I interviewed a fellow by the name of Hal Kramer a while back in Phoenix, and he is actually using carnivore for his nursing home residents in several nursing homes down in Phoenix, and he's having remarkable results. I mean, these people that are just like, kind of gorked out and just like, and now they're waking up, and some of them are even able to go home. We've had morbidly obese people at sometimes these nursing homes. It is because these people, when they get 500-600 pounds, no one can care for them, so they end up in nursing homes. And they've had people like there's a gal that was started out 550, and now she's into 300s now after only about 6 months, and so and out of the home. And so when you go to the nursing homes, I mean, as a physician, I would go in, and it was always sad to me because it just seemed like people are just waiting around to die, basically, which is kind of what they are. But the food quality was awful. I mean, it just seems like a bad place. I mean, are you seeing much of that? Have you ever attempted to say, "Hey, little old lady, maybe you should have some steak or something like that"? Has that ever crossed your mind there?
I go into the nursing home as a music consultant because I'm a singer. So that's my job. But I've been doing this type of thing for over 25 years. I was doing it on the side when I was working full time in New York. I used to bring my students, do community service. But the food in nursing homes, it makes my skin crawl. And not just the quality, but tons of carbs. And, the people are very sedentary. They look forward to their treats, their cookies, their pizza. I feel it's really not my place to say anything. It makes me really sad. But the man you mentioned, I think you did a podcast with him, or I saw a podcast, and I was so excited to see that because it's so simple, and I don't understand why more of it isn't happening. But if it ever comes up, trust me, I will say something.
Yeah. I did that interview with him, I think back in maybe December or something like that. And it was pretty well received, and he's doing quite well. And so,
and I do want to mention something. So I've been doing the nursing home circuit for over 25 years. And when I first started, my dad just passed away at like 91. I was doing music from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, like Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, blah, blah, blah. But now what's happening is the demographic in the nursing homes, it's getting younger and younger. And so there's people younger than me we're not talking about assisted living. We're talking about full care, skilled nursing homes, sitting in wheelchairs, like you said, waiting to die, waiting for bingo at 2:00. And I know that the dementia and Alzheimer's. So that's another reason why I went carnivore, because I have a family history of that. So I'm not a doctor, not a scientist, but I really think that the crappy food and the processed food contributes to the dementia and the Alzheimer's. Diabetes 3. Yes.
I don't think you need to be a doctor. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think it's just common sense, and yes, I believe it strongly does. And it is a sad thing to say that you've got people in their 40s and 50s that are already in nursing homes, and I just imagine if you're the child of a parent who's 50 years old and already demented, which is happening. What do you do with that person? I mean, if you can afford it, you stick them in a home, and they're going to sit there and be fed, cake and ice cream and chocolate chip cookies and Ensure drinks, crappy fake protein drinks, and that, or you keep them at your house, and then you have a hard time working because you don't know if you can trust them in the house, and so it is a looming crisis, and I think a lot of people are calling it type 3 diabetes, or at least Alzheimer's is. And so, yeah, I mean, it's scary where we're heading as a society. And gosh, first of all, I think everybody that's willing to take health into their own hands, because I think the healthcare system, unfortunately, has their incentives are quite frankly perverse. I mean, it's just the wrong thing. It's just get as many people on drugs as possible, it seems. And I mean, I know physicians say if they hit their targets for certain populations of putting them on different drugs, they get paid more, and it's just it's a perverse incentive. It's rather than not even caring about the outcome, just that they're on the drug. So, shame to see. Have you had any negatives? I mean, I think, to be fair, any negatives for carnivore? Any problems? Sleep, digestion, I mean, how is your digestion? Better, worse? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I made a list. I did my homework. I made a list of all the issues I had prior and all the things that have improved. So digestion is huge positive. That's why I gave up the vegetables, because I was the bloating, I was constipated. You think the more fiber you eat, the better off you are. So the negatives for carnivore. I don't really think I've had any when I travel, which I don't do too much, but I traveled for my daughter's wedding back to New York in September, and I just sort of plan ahead. The only negatives I have is people's reaction.
Yeah.
And so almost every single thing in my life that was a problem has improved. Depression, anxiety, inflammation, achy joints. I used to have a lot of low back issues. Improved. My sleep is amazing. Ask my husband. I go, good night, I'm asleep. And then I wake up and I'm good. So I'm either up or I'm sleeping. And my gut, that's a big thing. And I do want to talk frankly about menopause, if I may. I had a pretty easy transition. I didn't have a lot of hot flashes, but I had vaginal dryness and atrophy, and I went on hormones initially, and I'm off the hormones. And my husband says that our intimacy, it's like I'm like a 20-year-old. So if not for nothing else, ladies, carnivore is great for your menopause. And my husband, who's my age, very virile, we're in a second marriage, we're still on the honeymoon. And it's really, I think when your sexual health is good, that's an indicator of your overall health. So I don't think I can't think of any negatives except planning ahead when I eat out or other people's reactions. That would be my only.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's good to know, and I think it's a good question to ask, because some people do. Some people have issues. And I would agree. Yeah. I mean, when I remember as a young medical student, the attending physician said, hey, this guy's thinking about sex, he's getting healthier. And it is a part of normal human health and function. And so it's kind of an indicator, as a male, and you can't have an erection, then there's probably cardiovascular issues. And so it's important to not discount that. Are you running every day? Do you pretty much run every single day, or what's your training schedule look like? Or because you said you sleep well, I would imagine if you're running 20 miles a day, you're probably sleeping pretty good. Or I don't know what you run every day. I mean, maybe 10 miles or something like that.
So my schedule is I teach fitness classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I don't run those days at all because I teach like advanced cardio, strength training kind of thing. I teach 2 on Monday, 2 classes Monday, 2 classes Wednesday. So those days I get like 10 miles of steps teaching. I walk my dog. So I probably run 4, maybe 5 days a week. We usually hike 1 day a week. We do like a really good hike with lots of elevation. So I'd say I run 4 days a week. I average a good 50 miles a week. My birthday's coming up next week, so I'm going to kind of do a little self-supported ultra just for my birthday because I can. But my average is 40 to 50 miles a week, and I do not run every day. I walk, I hike, I do strength training, and I do sort of have a rest day once a week, but I clean, I active rest day.
Okay. There's a question here from Lori asking about dairy. Outside of butter, are you eating any dairy, cheese, milk, yogurts, things like that? Or what's your dairy consumption look like?
So I do love cheese, but cheese does not love me. So I finally had to be honest with myself, and I don't eat cheese anymore. I do put cream in my coffee, and I eat a lot of grass-fed butter, but I don't do cheese anymore. And I did feel deprived for like 5 minutes, but it's not worth it. So it's all about, eating foods that love me back. So I did have to give up cheese.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And I am similar situation. Occasionally I'll eat it, but most of the time I tend not to, and I do better when I'm excluding it. Are you doing strength training as well? I mean, what's a fitness class? Because you mentioned that. Are you doing any weightlifting or anything like that?
Yes, I do. Not a lot of heavy weights. I do light weights, and at least 2 to 3 times a week. Lots of push-ups. I work on the machines. I do free weights. So I do hip workouts, and I do some strength training at least 3 days a week.
Okay, very good. And how is the ultra community in Tucson or in Arizona in general? I imagine a lot of people out there like that because it's usually warm.
Oh yeah, we have that's one of the reasons we moved here. I didn't live in New York City. I lived upstate New York in the Catskill area, south of Albany. And I lived in the Catskills. It was gorgeous, but winter. But out here, there's a lot of running communities. There's the road running community, and there's several trail groups that I belong to, and really cool people, and lots of hiking, and lots of older people staying active, which is one of the reasons we wanted to retire here, because it's very inspiring to be around people that are older and moving and grooving.
Yeah, that's it. And some of the folks that I look up to are, I see guys in their 80s still in the gym hitting it, lifting heavy weights. And I think, well, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to do that? And I think, and this is just a public service announcement, irrespective of whatever dietary pattern you choose, the people that regularly exercise, there's an enormous difference between those and those that do not. And so I think, I don't care what you eat, you should be, in my view, exercising regularly and focusing on getting stronger and fitter. And those things are going to be just incredibly important overall. Are you on social media at all? Do you do much of social media stuff?
Yes, I am. I have a Facebook page. It's Lisa Zucker Glick. And I'm on Instagram. I think it's at Glick Lisa. And as I said, I just got certified to be a carnivore coach. So I am in the process of creating a website for that. I am available on the Revero, or I don't know if you just changed the name. I'm on that platform at Lisa G. Yeah. So if you like my story and you want to speak with me, I would be happy to help anyone, because I think the mental health aspect and the post-menopausal are probably my biggest platforms.
Yeah, okay. And of course, you've got the ultra running background, and so some people that might want to have some help with that. Since you've been on social media and maybe you're talking about eating a meat-based diet or a carnivore diet, have you gotten any sort of negative pushback? I mean, sometimes the vegans come out with their knives sharpened, ready to jump on you and telling you you're a whatever animal abuser, blah blah blah, all the crazy stuff they like to say. Have you experienced much of that?
I have experienced a lot of that. So I have a new philosophy now that if somebody writes something really nasty, I just delete. I'm not gonna waste my time engaging with them, because I'm not gonna change their mind. Yeah. And it's often people know this. Like, I got married, my daughter got married, I do all these wonderful things. They never like my good stuff, but if I put up something about being carnivore, they come at me. So I'm like, I'm not wasting the energy on that. I go, boop, delete. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah, probably the safest. And I've gotten very liberal with who I block on social media now, because I just, like I said, it's not worth the mental energy to deal with some of these knuckleheads. A lot of them, you just, when their teeth fall out, they come back, and they come to that.
Yeah.
Well, anything else we left out you want to share? Because we got a couple minutes left, and I have to head out for some other stuff. But anything else you'd like to add in there that we missed?
There's so many things. I have a list, but I just want to mention, my hair is growing. Like being on carnivore, I cut my hair short when we moved to Arizona 3 years ago, and I decided to grow it after my daughter's wedding, and it grew. Like, it hasn't grown since I'm a teenager. So I think that's a really indicative sign of good health. And I talked about the post-menopausal stuff, my mood. I think we've covered everything. I know everyone's different, but I remember even being a kid and never wanting to eat the bread on a sandwich. So I think this is really a way of eating that works for me and my body. And Dr. Shawn, I got to tell you, I really, really, really appreciate you and the Revero community. And it's really, really important to have support. So when people come at you, you don't feel like you're losing your mind. It's really important to have facts and knowledge and support. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's the community as well. I mean, we're all in this together. And I think you're right. The community is invaluable when it comes to, just having, somebody you can tell, a friend, a motivator, somebody to keep you accountable and that type of stuff. So good for you. Thanks for appearing. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and, keep motivating people and inspiring people. I do have to go, folks. We'll be back tomorrow with another guest, I think, maybe not. I can't remember. But anyway, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Lisa, thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.